Okay, just 1 minute. I can go live.
Look out for 5 minutes, 2 minutes countdowns in the chat, guys.
Going live. It's live on Facebook right now. Can start.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Peace be upon you and a very good morning to all of you. My name is Azman. I'm the president of the LSE Alumni Society of Malaysia. And it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to our webinar entitled The Next Big Thing, Powering Malaysia's Digital Economy. Since its inception more than 30 years ago, the LSE ASM has been very active in organizing events, colloquiums, conferences, covering a diverse range of topics and issues with a stellar cast of speakers and panelists, some controversial, some not, in line with LSE's motto, to know the causes of things, and with our own aspiration of making our country and the world we live in a better place. In 2019, LSE launched its 2030 Shaping the World initiative, where it aims to shape real-world policy and inspire the next generation to bring people together to learn and debate in person or digitally all over the world and provide a new education experience for the thought leaders of tomorrow. As a Malaysian extension of LSE 2030 campaign, we organized the LSE Recode Tech Conference in November 2019, and this was launched by Baroness Minu Shafiq herself, the director of LSE. And this conference actually provided a platform for LSE alumni and friends of LSE from leading corporations, government agencies, and disruptive and creative startups to collaborate and explore innovation in the technologies that are shaping the world. It is exciting to note the number of LSE alumni involved in developing and enabling technology, sometimes upsetting their parents in the process by not pursuing careers based on their degree, but becoming successful in their ventures. And we are very, very proud of them. We had planned a series of events and initiatives, but COVID-19 curtailed our ambitious plans. Fast forward 2 years later, as we begin to embrace new norms and transition to a post-pandemic environment, it is time to pick up the momentum again. With the new wave of technological breakthroughs and innovations, such as the metaverse, non-fungible tokens, decentralized financing, and Web 3.0, today's webinar, The Next Big Thing, Powering Malaysia's Digital Economy, shall create more awareness about where we are and what else can we expect for Malaysia's digital economy going forward from 2022 onwards, from the viewpoint of our distinguished alumni panelists. I will hand over the proceedings to our moderator, Puan Manisa Sarji. By way of introduction, Manisa is the co-founder and chief geek of Brand Geeks Incorporated, and also the head of our tech committee. Her strategic marketing and organization skills have been honed over 14 years of corporate experience, not forgetting her law education. She found her true north in 2012 when she set up Brand Geeks Incorporated, and has become what I believe to be a digital marketing evangelist in the local and regional scene. I will return to conclude the event later by announcing 2 new initiatives by the LSE ASM, so stay tuned until the very end of the webinar. Sit back, enjoy the show. Let's hear Manisa and the panelists unveil the next big thing powering Malaysia's digital economy. Over to you, Puan Manisa.
Thank you, Dato'. 5, 10, 20 years ago, I never would have imagined that the usage of technology, especially data, would be the way that we see them today. The World Bank's World Development Report 2021 on Data for Better Lives featured creative reuses of data for greater value. And examples that they gave included, number 1, how private internet data which are taken from published articles, social media, call data records, Google Trends and big data are used to study COVID-19. And other examples like private internet data, which are not collected through government, which were used to identify the number of adults who who lack a formal financial account. And imagine globally, adults that lack a formal financial account, based on the numbers that they counted, was 1.7 billion. Can you imagine that? And that was based on data available in 2017. With the beginning of new technologies like Metaverse, Web 3.0, NFT, and DeFi, as Dato mentioned just now, we can see more push for a different level of engagement, a different type of digital identity and evaluation. And to a large extent, decentralization and democratization of things is also on demand. All of this requires a certain amount of connectivity, of course, social contract and governance in place. Now, based on the Malaysia digital economy blueprint, it seems like Malaysia, we have quite a lot of fundamentals in tech adoption that needs to be covered. With these, the question that I hope to answer by the end of the session is what's next for Malaysia, and do we have what it takes? Welcome to the next big thing powering Malaysia's digital economy. My name is Manisa Saruji. I am a law graduate from the London School of Economics, and with Brand Geeks, I will be serving you as your moderator today. With me, I have three impressive alumnus of the LSE who are taking on the Malaysian digital economy in their own ways. Azeem Abu Bakar is an LSE accounting and finance graduate who founded a media analytics solution in the UK from a hackathon. He made a business out of it and brought that experience to Rev Media Group as managing director of Free Malaysia Today. And then we have Kien Poon, who has an LSE economics degree, and he has applied his superpower in finance to support SMEs as the backbone of Malaysia's economy with digital financing and credit technology. And last but not least, we've got Aireen Omar. Aireen, with her LSE economics degree, who did start off with a career in the high finance world. I understand you were first inspired by your father and also Michael J. Fox. And in search of contentment, she decided to break out of the finance world and went entrepreneurial and operational with the AirAsia group. Aireen has been a key part of the growth of AirAsia for the last 15 years, especially the point when they repositioned as a lifestyle brand more than an airline based on the reuse of data of 600 million people they had already gathered 4 years ago, way before when the pandemic hit. Thank you everyone for joining us. So I'd like to start with the first question, and I'd like to welcome our first speaker to share about what is the next big thing for Free Malaysia Today. But before we begin, I would also like to invite questions from the audience. Please place your questions in the chat, and we will take the questions later during the Q&A session. Over to you, Azeem Abu Bakar.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, I'm really honored to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me. So before I begin, I would like to introduce you to FMT. FMT is a bilingual news site. Our contents are both in BM and English. We focus on national news, politics, economy. We are big on lifestyle. We're big on technology. We also do sports. Generally, we are quite universal in our coverage as a media organization. But more importantly, FMT aims to provide intelligent and balanced journalism, and that has been our clarion call from 2009. So we've been around for slightly more than 10 years, and this formula of intelligence and balanced journalism works, as we have seen a steady rise of our readership in the last 5 years, from about 2 million to now about 6 million a month. And in some months, it peaked up to about 8.8 million. And recently, FMT is doing a collaboration with Media Prima, and together through the content collaboration, we are reaching out to about 15 million unique visitors, or 15 million Malaysians every single month. and that represents about 83% of the digital news readership in Malaysia. So being a major digital media agency, we form part of Malaysia's digital economy, and thereby we do play a role in powering it up. So today we are talking about the next big thing, and actually I'm here not to talk to you about AI, about flying cars or smart cities, augmented reality, VR. I wouldn't say that falls in the area of expertise for a media company, which is why I think perhaps the other speakers can touch on that. But as a media agency which monitors the development of this country, we can give you a perspective of where we are as a nation, which will shed some light on what it is to come. Now, the fact is, Malaysia has many things to fix. We're a great country. We are a melting pot of culture. We have great talent, but we have many things to fix. And before we talk about the next big thing, we need to ask ourselves, is Malaysia ready? Now, at least from the FMT side of things, we want to put forth the idea that the next big thing begins with a mental reset. Now, I'm going to outline the points that I'll be making in basically six areas. The first is we will touch on the lessons learned about what has happened in Malaysia in the last 6 decades or so. But we're going to look at, in particular, the last 10 years. Then we're going to talk about mental reset. Why mental reset is the next big thing before we can even talk about the other big things. And what is the role of media to educate everybody, educate the people, to create the awareness to have that mental reset? And what calls to action for us to make this mental reset happen? And finally, what is the outcome if we can achieve this mental reset? Now, let's look at the lessons learned. The first thing I want to touch upon is to regain something as we call as the lost decade for Malaysia. Now, the income per capita of Malaysia has been quite stagnated in the last 10 years. We were hovering at about 10,000 USD per year per capita in 2011, and it has been pretty much so today. And when we look at value creation from among the private sector, one of the indicators that we can look at is actually Bursa. So the Bursa in 2011, we were doing about 1,500 points. But today, we are also at about 1,500 points 10 years later. And compare that with NASDAQ, right? So NASDAQ is just one of the stock exchanges in the US, but they've seen the growth of the index from 2,700 to about 16,000, almost 16,000 today. And that is about 6 times the increase, or 6-fold. And they have been growing exponentially. They have been, listing and having the big tech corporation entering in the trillions of dollars of valuation. So that is where we are at in Malaysia. There is stagnation. The second is political instability and economic uncertainty, which spook investors. Now, we have experienced 3 changes in government in the last 3 years. And I would like to share with you a story. Now, FMT was recently invited to speak to Fortune 500 companies. In the audience, there were Apple, Google, IBM, Nike, Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, Oracle, Cisco, Amazon, Intel, Visa, FedEx, 3M, CT, and General Electric. Now, in the audience, we received questions on things like the judiciary system. Can we put 100% faith in the judiciary system to ensure there's justice in dispute? So why do policies keep changing? Why do we put hurdles to expatriates, like the issue we have with the MM2H, cabotage policy, free trade? What are our positions on those areas? So these are the things which investors ask us. Are we ready to answer them with confidence? Are we ready to tell them that the ecosystem is ready for them? Now, the third is social economic policy that attracts talent. Do we have a social economic policy that is somewhat foolproof? Is the NEP working? Does it have shortcoming? How is the shared prosperity vision different from the NEP? Because as you can see, other countries outside, they are going into the trillions of dollars evaluation, and this couldn't have been possible if they don't have the best talent in the world working with them. So the question is whether Malaysia can afford to deprioritize merit when other countries are sprinting ahead. Then finally, how do we regain competitiveness as a nation? Do we have a robust tech ecosystem? Is our approach to financing accessible to SMEs? What is the cost of doing business in Malaysia? Are we losing out to our peers in the region? What are they doing that we are not? Now, these questions, these policies actually goes beyond MDEC or MAGIC, because this is a national level issue that we have to address together, right? And because what makes a business successful is the support that is provided by institutions, the judiciaries, the ministries, the policies, the culture of our work, the ethics of our work. Are we hardworking enough? Are we punctual, right? Is the education system producing the kind of inventors that this country needs so that Malaysia can sell something that the world needs, right? Malaysia, does it have a unique position in the global supply chain? What do we sell to the world? Is it still going to be oil, palm oil? We know that these industries are facing challenges, and even in some news commentaries that the people are saying these industries is doomed, right? So in decades to come. So what is it that Malaysia want to be known for? So these are the things that we have to ask with regard to regaining Malaysia's international competitiveness. Right, so why do we need this mental reset? Now, firstly, we need to be honest that things may not be working out for us as well as we need it to. And we need to relook at how to regain that lost decade. We need to be able to open our minds to go back to the drawing board to chart a new path. And we cannot continue to forego merit because in order to attract talent, we have to be fair to them. We have to incentivize them correctly. Because if we fail to do so, we may appease to certain community temporarily, but when other nations are reaping and creating their wealth, enlarging their economic pie, leaving us behind, then that is when we will realize that our economic pie is shrinking, and chaos may start to happen because everybody is trying to scramble whatever that's left. So a complete reset to our economic system is needed. We need to identify our competitive advantage in the global economy and start to devote resources there. We need to look at our political system. Is it working? How do we root out corruption? How do we enact political funding laws? And of course, in terms of talking about mental reset, we as Malaysian, we need to have a more positive attitude towards innovation and entrepreneurship. I will give you an example. The flying cars, right? When the government 3 years ago wanted to introduce the flying cars, I think it was met with a lot of cynicism. People talking about the cars being, kereta terbang Doraemon, and a certain politician looks like Nobita, right? But whether we realize it or not, in Dubai they started the air taxi, flying cars is actually a big thing outside of Malaysia. So why are we kidding ourselves, right? We need to have a mindset that is less reliant on the government, less reliant on grants, embrace entrepreneurship in its true sense, take calculated risks, and have a genuine desire to compete in the world stage. So this is what we need to have, the kind of mental shift that we need to have, the next big thing in terms of mental shift that this nation needs. So the media would actually need to play a role in educating the public, at least making them aware of the need for a mental reset. And that's why media has to be intelligent, it has to be balanced. Then only that it will gain the trust of the people for people to read them and be able to act accordingly. We need to be able to elevate the thinking of the society so that they make informed choices. And society must reset their minds. And with wisdom, everything else will start to fall in place for the next, the following big things to happen. because they will start to elect the right leaders, and the right leaders will then craft the right policies. And the intelligent society, a more intelligent society, will then act accordingly to good policies to build the country. And you see, a democracy is like an airplane. Now, just imagine there's an airplane and the people are the passengers. And then this airplane, you get to choose between two pilots, right? Now, pilot A, knows how to fly the plane, will follow all the rules, will follow the instruction of the air traffic controller. Then you have pilot B, right? And this pilot B doesn't really know how to fly the plane, but pilot B will offer everybody, all the passengers, that they can sit in business class, right? But if the society is not well informed, which pilot do you think they will vote for? Which pilot do you think they will choose? Surely they will choose pilot B, because they'll get to sit in business class. But imagine what will happen to that plane. So that's why Malaysian, all of us will need that mental reset to know which pilot to choose. And that's where media will come in to educate. But then again, when I say that media needs to educate, media also face challenges, because I would be lying to say that we don't receive calls to censor us. We don't receive calls from stakeholders to tell us to do things a certain way. There are those kind of calls, but at least in FMT's case, I can say that all sides do call us, because sometimes, we tend to criticize all sides, so that's where they start calling us. But we also praise both sides, all sides. But then when we are labeled as pro-government one day and pro-opposition in another day, then I think we are doing our job, right? There's something right that we are doing that there. And sometimes people do question whether commercial interests would compromise editorial integrity. And I would say that at least in FMT, it doesn't. And I will tell you how we have done this, right? So now, what is the media's job? Our job is to tell the truth and give as much information as possible so people make informed choices. It's about giving a voice to people, to stakeholders, to anybody that needs a voice. Even commercially, media, they do commercial deals with clients to give the clients a voice. But this does not mean that the media is going to be silenced just because they receive money from those clients. It is not paid to be a mouthpiece. But media communicates the value of the clients to the customers through advertising, and we showcase their goods and services that help customers. So media also plays the role to clarify misunderstanding, but we cannot be used to cover up wrongdoings or hide weaknesses. So everybody will need to work with media strategically to bolster your brand presence. And the thing is, if people can understand this, then media can play its role a lot more effectively, and we can help deliver that mental reset.
Azeem, with another 2 minutes to go,
yeah, I was saying,
I'm very interested to know,
yes.
based on since you mentioned about all these things that media is doing, how are you able to use, or how are you using the media data that you're receiving in order to look at a new way of approaching, engaging with your viewers, your consumers, which I would say would be your next big thing. Maybe you can share your thoughts on that.
Okay, so thanks for the question. Now, okay, so as a media organization, we read we have our finger on the pulse, because we get the analytics, the numbers from the readership, and from there we know which story works, which story resonate with people, right? And we also have our reporters on the ground, and they have the feedback and they feed it up to us, so we know what's going on with regards to sentiment and brand brand exposures of certain, say, clients. And the thing is, when we talk about data, this is something which we do every single day, and we are able to read the minds of the people, and when we talk about helping SMEs, we are able to share resources with them, and of course data, as what people say that it is the new oil, right? And the thing is, more on this later about how FMT or media companies can help SMEs to be able to leverage on the data pool that we have to help harness their business, right? Yeah, but the thing is, just before I end my points, right? The collectively, in order to become a major, to have that next big thing, as a media company, we look beyond the data or the technology, right? But we have to make sure that we set the right stage for businesses to grow, right? And it starts with having the kind of mindset that is progressive for Malaysia, so that we can all be able to elevate the thinking of the society first, right? Then the other things will come into place. When the people are more informed, they make better decisions. Boy, isn't that one hell of a next big thing, right? Then the things, the data functionality, the leveraging on an AI, the leveraging on virtual reality, and I think after this we are going to talk about metaverse, will come into play. So this is how we will then be able to frame the society for the next big thing to happen. Thank you.
And definitely framing the society for the next big thing is much needed, because if people do not understand or do not know what they need to expect or they need to appreciate, we will find that you'll be stuck. And I think both parties, the people who are pushing for the innovation as well as the people who are supposed to receive the innovation, will not be able to engage and connect and get to the results that that is desired. All right. Now I would like to welcome our second speaker to share about what is the next big thing for funding societies. Over to you, Kien Poon.
Hi. No, I'm KP from Funding Societies. First and foremost, very grateful to the AirAsia Alumni Society for having me today, and also to Malaysia and the team for putting together this session. So I'm in the company of giants today. So I think Free Malaysia today and AirAsia probably need no introduction in Malaysia. So relatively speaking, we are the new kid on the block. So I'll take a few minutes to introduce the company, Funding Societies, and what we do, and then sort of segue into the three big things that we are looking forward in this digital decade. So Funding Societies is the largest SME digital financing company in Southeast Asia. So we started operating in 2015. To date, we have disbursed close to 8 billion ringgit of financing to around 80,000 SMEs across the 4 countries that we are operating in. So Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand, or what we deem the missed countries. So we provide financing to underserved and unserved businesses, funded directly by retail, high net worth, and institutional investors. Contrary to popular belief, so we don't compete with the banks. We actually complement the banks in terms of providing debt funding to businesses, whether it's providing top-up financing to SMEs who already have a bank loan, but they're looking to have a bit more to grow their business, or giving a younger, smaller SME their first business financing. So besides financing, we also have a SaaS proposition, software as a service, to basically bring offline SME online and digitalize their business transactions to get them ready for this digital decade. So I think we all agree that COVID is bad for everyone from a social and health perspective. It devastated many businesses, I think, due to the necessary but very painful movement and lockdowns that have been implemented by governments worldwide. But I think there are industries that benefited immensely from COVID. So your glove makers, logistics, and all things digital, so including digital financial services. So based on a recent report from Google, Temasek, and Bain, so we have had 60 million new digital consumers in Southeast Asia in the past 2 years. So 60 million, for context, is equivalent to 2 Malaysia, or 10 times the population of Singapore. And a significant amount of these 60 million don't come from the cities. So they come from outside the urban areas where traditionally, it's harder to reach, they're more offline. Now, when there are a lot more transactions online, there are a lot more data that digital lenders like ourselves can harness to provide a seamless financing to businesses. So especially the thin file micro SMEs that the banks traditionally do not serve very well. And also they may be a bit too expensive to be acquired by funding societies because we are predominantly digital. And if they are on an offline channel, we may actually need to build an offline sales team to go and acquire them previously. But because of COVID, they are all forced to move online, right? To be able to lead a normal life, to transact as usual, to do businesses. I mean, no choice. To survive, they had to move digital. And this is sort of the trend that we'll be sort of benefiting from or trying to tap onto in the future. So the first big thing that we are looking forward is to harness this digital data to offer right-size productive financing to SMEs. So right-size productive financing. I mean, we are already doing this for a segment of our SMEs, working with partners like telcos, online platforms, both B2B and B2C, to offer sort of pre-approved financing to businesses in their ecosystem. So we know how much they transact on monthly. We are able to extrapolate their revenues. We can understand their cash flow cycles, their repayment profile, and without the SME furnishing any documents upfront, we can already extend them a financing offer. So the next step that we are working towards or very much looking forward to is basically leverage on all this new digital data that is accumulated from the COVID times to extend this capability across all our product offerings. So providing right-size financing for SMEs when they need it before they even ask for it, right? So the next thing that we are very much looking forward is basically, financing tapping the supply chain financing for large corporates and also the digital economies. So this is not something new, but I think there has been a paradigm shift in thinking, especially among the more traditional merchants and corporates. So the same report by Google, Temasek and Bain, they actually mentioned that more than half of businesses surveyed expect 80% of their sales to come from online channel. And likewise, 80% of their procurements to happen digitally. And in fact, this is very consistent with what we see on the ground. So on the digital economy front, we are looking forward to actually work with more partners to provide embedded finance, virtual credit, buy now, pay later proposition for businesses. So historically, I think when we speak to partners before COVID, I think there's a bit of hesitation because they do not immediately see the value of working with a player like us to provide embedded finance through that platform. But I think since COVID started, when they realized that, hey, actually the merchants in my ecosystem, they actually need support to be able to do their business. They have short-term cash flow issue where, they need some bridging financing to sort of get them started again, and of course over time to grow their business. So a lot more partners are more willing to have a chat to see how we can partner with them moving forward. So these are players like procurement platform, your e-invoicing system, payment gateways, etc. I mean, digital economy aside, I think a very big part of the economy is still offline. So I think we are also very keen to work with supply chain of more traditional corporates. So for instance, to offer distributor or retailer financing for SMEs in their supply chain to grow or regrow their business in 2022, where we estimate, where we are hopeful that the economy will start recovering. So by doing so, we will be helping the SMEs to buy in bulk for better margins. We also help the corporate to digitalize their supply chain, make it more resilient, and of course, accelerated payment to the corporates. I think this is why we have recently collaborated with MUFG Bank Malaysia to sort of finance the supply chain of their corporate clients. And this partnership is actually built on one of our SaaS offering that I mentioned earlier. So we have a proprietary digital supply chain platform that we call Silk Road internally. So the third big thing that we are looking forward is basically to do more for the SMEs. So historically, we have been taking a credit-first approach to helping SMEs. But I think if you look at some of the surveys that are out there in the market, the top 5 pain points of SMEs, besides access to financings, there are a lot more like managing expenses, keeping stock of their inventory, making payments, looking for lower cost remittance solutions. So what we are looking to do is basically trying to see how we can bundle our credit offerings with payment solutions, SaaS solutions such as expense management app, and if there are opportunities to even partner with incumbent banks to see how we can offer a bank account or a cash management proposition to these SMEs. And by extension, and this sort of relates to the first point that I mentioned earlier. So having this actually allows us to better tap into their cash flow and expense cycle to offer a superior financial proposition. Now, when you are using all this expense management app, etc., of course, with the SME consent, it really gives us a 360 visibility on their cash flow. And from there, we are able to say, okay, for instance, come your 11/11, your 10/10 or 12/12 sales, the merchant may be thinking, hey guys, I actually need to buy more stocks to keep up with the demand. And then they realize that, I actually need more cash flow. And that's where you start applying, for financing from banks and whatnot. But with all this data, we can actually track their business cycles. And we can, when it comes to, when it comes to period where we historically have seen an uptick in sales and whatnot, we can drop a message in the inbox or in the app and say, hey guys, here is 50,000 for you to draw down without necessarily providing any documents, because we already have all the information. So with all this, we are probably looking, we are looking to transform ourselves from the digital SME lending company towards a more neobank-like offerings that we see in other jurisdictions. So to recap, 3 things that we're really looking forward, harnessing all the digital data that is available, that's accumulated through people transacting online throughout the 2 years, financing supply chain of both digital and traditional economies in a bigger way, and offering a non-credit solutions to complement the credit first approach that we have been adopting previously. Yep, thanks.
Thanks, Kien Poon, for sharing on that. I do have some follow-up questions. So with the 360 degrees visibility of the SME's cash flow, I can see that definitely predicting their cash flow needs is something that would be of help to the SMEs, because the application process for financing is normally very tedious for them. But I guess my question is, you're going on a 360 visibility of what is predictable. How do you manage the part that is not predictable? Because I think from the last 2 years, you can see that one of the major things that has changed or has impacted SMEs a lot is the unpredictability of consumer behavior. How they have changed from, I want to buy everything online a lot to, I want to get out of this house, I want to go travel, I want to go buy things somewhere else. So how are you guys managing that and that part which is not predictable?
Yeah, I think basically, some of you may have foreseen COVID, but I think we didn't. So nobody expected COVID to hit. Maybe we expected, pandemic or virus from time to time, but we didn't expect it to hit it in such a big way. So I think a very big piece of this is being agile and being able to sort of leverage the data that you have to sort of make some predictions about the future and also to manage risk. So for instance, one of the key value proposition of a digital SME financier like us is basically to focus on short-term transaction-based financing. So for instance, most of the financing that we give out, contrary to banks, are short-term financing. So anything between 1 month all the way up to maybe 6-7 months. And by keeping the financing tenor short and basing it based on the underlying business transaction, we are able to sort of mitigate some of this risk because there's an inbuilt risk mechanism. So when when we do see business trending downtrend, we can sort of reduce the credit line that's offered to you because essentially you don't need so much credit to do your business. Yeah, so I think it all boils down to how we are able to study the data to come up with some sort of risk management or credit profile of the SMEs.
I think that definitely makes sense. When you keep things short term, definitely I guess, when you have to cut your losses, it's much easier for you to do that.
Not so much on cutting losses, but also, giving a right size or a financing that meets the SME needs. Because I think if they need long-term financing, the banks are there. And obviously the banks do long-term financing very well. But for us, we are here to complement the bank's offering. And that's where, all this short-term financing, are actually more geared towards meeting the SME's short-term business needs.
Just one final question. In terms of right-sizing solutions for the need of certain ecosystems or certain community, could you elaborate a little bit more about how that works? How do you get data from the community, especially if the community are not online or not readily digital? Or are you saying you just work with those which are already digital? Could you share a bit more on that?
Happy to. Happy to. So for the digital economy, that's actually quite straightforward. So let's say we work with an online platform that where the merchants basically sell their things and consumer go buy the things through the platform. Now from this platform, we can sort of estimate the historical sales of this particular business, and from there we are able to take a certain kind of margins or haircuts and whatnot to extend them the financing that they need based on the historical business growth and whatnot. So this is what I meant by right size financing for the digital economy. Now for offline economy, so you are right to say that it's a bit more tricky. So we work with both offline and offline economy. Now on the offline side, we may need to take a different approach where we maybe onboard them on an offline manner. But then that's where the whole SaaS offering is interesting. So we'll be providing them all these SaaS solutions, expense management, the supply chain platform, where we gradually bring them online. So once they're online and they are able to build a track record using all these solutions and whatnot, that's where we are able to then leverage on the data to continuously giving them a right size financing. So you may need to start from a more traditional approach, so looking at bank statements, looking at credit scoring data, CRA's report and whatnot, but gradually that's where you are able to sort of bring them digital.
So basically your third next big thing is supporting your first next big thing for those who are offline, right?
Yeah, correct. I think this is very in line with some of the initiatives that the government has pushed out as well.
All right. Thank you so much, KP, for that sharing. Absolutely insightful. SMEs in financing, this is something that I think this is a relationship that is always going to be ongoing. And I think the COVID situation definitely tested the banking industry on whether it could cope with what the SMEs are facing actually, still ongoing. And it's great to see that funding societies provide an alternative that could complement what the big banks are trying to do as well. And with that, I would like to welcome our third speaker to share about what is the next big thing for AirAsia Digital. Over to you, Aireen Omar.
Hi, thank you, Manisa. Hello, everyone. Good morning to you. Maybe before I actually explain what should be the next big thing for AirAsia, just a little bit of explanation of what AirAsia Digital does and why we have AirAsia Digital. So it all started because we saw that data has become a great asset to us, more so than our own aircraft. And this is really because of the fact that we have lots and lots of data in our booking system, and data from the whole operations of managing the aircraft, whether it's managing the aircraft on the tarmac or flying it over from one destination to another and so forth. So we have data from the engines, from how the pilots are operating the aircraft, or how we're managing the turnaround time or the passengers' movements and so forth, basically. So when we realize that value of data that we have, especially when we have lots of consumer data also from our booking system, coming from our website and also from our mobile app, we felt that this is something that can be the next big thing for us. And that means, how do we ingest all this data into one foundry, make sure that we could visualize it even better, and then see how we can build from there and becoming more than just an airline. Because the only way for you to grow as an airline is really by building new routes, having new destinations, building the number of frequencies of those flights that you have on those routes that you have, or having joint ventures around the region, right? And we know that by doing all this, it's really more of a horizontal growth rather than any exponential growth and so forth. But this wealth of data that we have can be something that we could build on the assets that we have already created. Like you said earlier, with over 600 million people in our database, with over 70 million unique visitors a month in our website and so forth, with over 330 routes, over 80 destinations, and a huge ASEAN base as our backyard. What else can we do? Can we build from becoming just an airline? And our vision was to be a travel and lifestyle tech. So we wanted to do this more than 3 years ago, actually. We wanted to do this 10 years ago by how to use this data, but I think we were ahead of our time at that point in time, that we didn't really follow through and we didn't get the right kind of talent to be able to build on it. So it's only just about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, 2017 really. It all started with us trying to use this data well. And we realized we got to put them into one foundry. And that first step was to put everything into cloud. So that was the first step, trying to find a good cloud partner. And we went through various cloud service providers, ended up with Google because we felt that what they do, their vision and their culture fits with ours quite well. And from there, we started building things. Firstly, the whole idea was, how do we make use of this to make the whole company more data-driven? Cut down all the manual processes and so forth that stresses everybody else. And how do we manage volume? Because with the kind of operations that we have, we were, before COVID, of course, we had 21,000 flights a day in the region itself. So every few seconds, there's a flight taking off or landing. And every few minutes, we have to turn around aircraft, right? Our standard operating procedure is 25 minutes turnaround. And with with over 300 aircraft, how do you do that with an airport that's huge? We can't be doing manual processes or basing it on gut feel or hearsay or so, right? How do we make it accurate so we protect that 25 minutes turnaround so that the flights will always continue, the planes will only continue to fly rather than just being on ground and so forth, because every delay costs us money and opportunity lost for us to earn more revenue. So the whole idea was to address the pain points that each department may have, or each stakeholder may have in making a productive and efficient operations. And from there, it started on building new use cases, because as the team found areas in terms of like addressing the issues or providing a solution, they saw many other use cases that could be used across the whole operations, right? So how do we use data? Firstly, on the revenue side, is how do we improve our conversion rate? How do we be more personalized and targeted and understanding the consumer even better? How do we create a whole consumer lifetime value that will, we got increase the value of the consumer and having them coming back in various period and so forth, right? And also from there, how do we also see new business areas that we could create? And hence the birth of AirAsia Digital, really. And then secondly, how do we use data to improve the cost efficiency of our own operations? Optimizing every aspect of what we do, optimizing the schedule, optimizing the fuel consumption, because every 1 percentage point of fuel consumption that we could reduce, that's hundreds of millions of US dollars that we could save, right? So that's one part of how we use that data, and that's probably the most important thing too, because it's not just on the operations, but also in terms of your marketing campaign and so forth. I mean, we've over 600 million people on our database and so forth. Maybe half of them we couldn't use because we need to clean it up properly and all that. But how do we have a more effective campaign by using our own data itself and be more targeted and reduce that overall cost, so we don't have to rely on Facebook or Google ads and so forth, really. And that's what one of the companies did. They didn't use any advertising vendors or campaign. They did it all by themselves using that data, and they managed to reduce that cost considerably while maintaining that revenue, even though they were doing it during a very tough time during the pandemic. Especially, and this is the Big Rewards team that has done that. Then thirdly, how do we use data for a seamless journey for our own consumers or passengers, right? We said passengers, but now it's consumers or even users, because we cut across various line of businesses now, not just on aviation, right? So at every touch point, how do they have a pleasant journey, and how do we incorporate their natural behavior so it's seamless for them? Whether we use facial recognition or voice activation, or even a simple algorithm that is, it's such as a single sign-on or something like that, that cuts across multiple platforms, so that they don't have to keep logging in and giving their details, but across various platforms of line of businesses in our ecosystem, it's seamless, efficient, and personalized for them, basically. So that's how it all started, really. We wanted to do this back in 2017, 2018. We started building up AirAsia Digital. At that point in time, we called it RedBeat Ventures. We renamed it to AirAsia Digital last year because people couldn't really relate to the name RedBeat Ventures for some reason. Our brand AirAsia was so strong. So when we say AirAsia Digital, they go, oh, okay. So that's why we decided to rename that. So what we have in AirAsia Digital right now, we've pivoted in a great way from just an airline flying people from one destination to another destination to what you say, 3 key big businesses, and there's a few smaller businesses that we're incubating. Firstly, the super app business. Secondly, our logistic business called Teleport. And then thirdly, our fintech business called BigPay. And all this was built because we saw that the assets that we have created can be even bigger in terms of value if we establish it as a separate entity and have it serve and reach out to the markets that we already serve in ASEAN, and also reach out to the masses, which is what all AirAsia is all about. It's all about serving the masses, provide accessible, affordable products and services as well. So what is Super App really? It used to be AirAsia.com. It was part of the airline. It was where all the traffic goes to book your flights, basically. And because I mentioned before, huge database in there, 70 million people, unique visitors per month or so. We felt that this can be more than just selling our own flights, which usually people on average will look into that site maybe 4 times a year or so, right? Because naturally people fly and travel 4 times a year on average. This is what we found out, basically. So we felt that how do we increase this frequency and velocity of the users coming into our site and our app rather than just for flights? We felt that we could cross-sell a lot of things. They are, after all, our consumer. We own them. We make it a point when we first started low-cost carrier of AirAsia to not go through travel agents, to not have someone else acquire customer for us. We felt that this is our own consumer. We need to understand their behavior. We need to be able to own them. And hence the reason why we make that executive decision that the best pricing can only be found in our website directly. So they book directly with us. So, so we felt that let's probably sell other airlines flights. Let's build a whole OTA. And this was, of course, before pandemic, before COVID hits. We felt that the AirAsia.com can turn into an OTA. We could beat Traveloka, Expedia, and so forth. Because why? We own the flights. We own the inventories. We can have the best pricing. So let's offer everything that the traveler needs and wants, so they don't need to go anywhere else, right? And this is where we created hotels, travel itineraries. We created Muslim-friendly itineraries, duty-free shopping that can be done before you actually fly. You could, once you book, you could actually buy your duty-free, get it delivered to your hotel or to anyone else, or at the airport or at the boarding gate and that kind of thing. Basically, all this were planned because we want to make it a seamless experience for consumer. And if we can incorporate facial recognition, that would be even great, because we have huge volume of passengers going into our airport, and it's been difficult for our guest services to be handling the check-in and everything of that sort. But how do we incorporate that facial recognition also into our booking, so they could pay using their face, or we could have a facial database that could help with all the various operations in our line of businesses and so forth. So as I was saying, the super app was meant to turn into an OTA first before it goes into your everyday lifestyle needs. But when pandemic hits us and we couldn't fly, and this is the worst environment that could ever happen to us, right? I mean, our capacity reduced to 20% only. It's very, very tough, and we weren't flying for more than 3 months in the first MCO, and then the next MCO came. It's even, it got back to what it was in the first MCO. So it's a lot of uncertainty. Never that we have dealt this ever before. But that means that we could put all our effort to build what we need to build on the digital side and repurpose the resources that we have to help build it, whether the repurpose of using our own manpower and other form of resources and assets to make sure that whatever that what we're building is work. So the super app then, apart from putting in all those travel related line of businesses, we decided to put in the e-commerce part of it. How can we affect and influence the day-to-day activities of our own consumers as well? So we started providing food delivery. We started having an e-commerce platform that sells things. We're selling products. We were reinventing our duty-free into a beauty shop, basically. Why? Because we have all the right kind of business partners who are all our duty-free providers or travel retail suppliers. And how can we provide that to those on a day-to-day basis? Because we have better range and it's cheaper as well. And then we started doing ride-hailing. It was just launched in August, and that can provide an end-to-end solution. Once we start flying in full capacity or so, that will be just fantastic. It provides a whole services for the consumer from the moment they book. They go to the airport. Once they arrive, they can use the ground transportation that we provide to our ride-hailing business, and once they return and so forth, basically. And then we started offering financial services. This is primarily anchored around big pay, but it's not just financial services in terms of payments and so forth of the transaction, but how can we also provide bite-sized financial management or products and services to our consumers so that they can have the opportunity for wealth management, for insurance and so forth. So we also aggregate various financial services provider, not just big pay, and put them on our super app, right? So we were putting a lot of things there. We were testing, we were trying and that kind of thing. So eventually from, we figured out like, okay, no, we're not going to be another Shopee or Lazada or something like that. Let's just focus on what we do best and that we could deliver it well. So that e-commerce then become beauty focused, become food delivery, become ride hailing, become grocery. Now this grocery is a very interesting thing because as we were helping out the small, medium enterprises during the pandemic last year, especially during the MCO, they were suffering. We had this Save Our Shop campaign where we decided to invite all the merchants, SMEs, to be on our platform so they can continue to do their business. And as a result of that, we have farmers and fishermen who came up to us to want to offload tonnage of their produce, and they couldn't do so. So we matched them with our merchants, or so we create a B2B platform. And then now it evolved into something else. So we're doing a farm to table kind of concept, basically. So it's a B2B, now it's a B2C. So we're actually providing groceries directly as well to our consumers. So that's what Super App is all about. It's about building a commercial platform. It's not just selling our own flights, but all other line of businesses that affects the consumer's day-to-day lifestyle. It provides media platform as well. And it's got a loyalty, which is big rewards. Our other business that provides stickiness and reduce the customer acquisition. We created a chat function to promote community engagement as well. So it's like your mini Facebook. So if you look at the chat functions, you have various communities on travel or on food, on beauty or anything of that sort. So it's a way of engaging with consumers and our users. And so it reduces our customer acquisition costs as well, apart from the loyalty points and all that. So that's what Super App is all about. It's evolved from AirAsia.com. We turn it into an entity. We put in the right kind of management in there, and it's governed by a board. So the reason why we have it as an entity, because we felt that it can create greater value. It could serve others, and it's supposed to also offer other products apart from just AirAsia products as well. And you would see that we also offer other airlines flights in there as well. Then we have Teleport, which is our logistic business. This is a spun-off from our cargo department. Our cargo department was something that we created because we needed to earn more revenue during that turnaround period. So we felt within that 25 minutes turnaround, in our aircraft, there's a belly space there that is not being used. So how can we earn revenue from that belly space? So this is where we offered transportation of goods through our cargo business. So certain flights, the belly space will be filled up. Certain flights, probably just half of it or so. So it, depending on the routes, basically. So it was meant to earn extra revenue while we turn around the aircraft. But then we saw the opportunity of becoming a big logistic player, really because of the fact of the breadth and depth of the network that we have. Like I mentioned, we have over 330 routes, not just in Southeast Asia, but also through AirAsia Rex. We fly into China, India, Australia, Korea, Japan, and so forth. Those are bigger markets that we can reach out from our ASEAN base. So we decided to turn it into a logistic business, create another entity, have the right key management in there to run it, and with the right kind of board to govern it. And there are two areas that we decided to build that business. Of course, the freight business continues, the cargo business, but we also decided to open up to managing other airlines' belly space. And how do we do this is also to create more transparency in the pricing, right? Because cargo business currently or in the past is quite mafia-like. Nobody knows exactly what's the pricing. It's some sort of a fraternity business that could rip you off really if you're not careful. So we want to be more transparent. So the team created this blockchain called Freight Chain, where we invite other airlines or other cargo freighters to be in the community. So we have I think about 9 other airlines in there or so. So that's a side thing that they're experimenting apart from us managing the belly space of our own airlines. We also have door-to-door delivery because we feel the whole logistic business need to have not just the middle mile with the cargo, but also the first mile and the last mile. And this door-to-door delivery is supposed to facilitate the big e-commerce boom that you have. So it's not meant to just support the Super App business, but it's also meant to look at other businesses outside the ecosystem which they can support. And this includes the Lazadas and the Shoppies and the Zaloras and so forth. And they've been doing door-to-door delivery for those businesses as well. And then we have FinTech. That's something that we created from scratch. It wasn't spun off from anything, but it started with Tune Money. When Tune Money started was because of the fact that we saw travelers traveling from one country to another, and they keep changing their currencies, and they had to change currency at a exorbitant rate. And this was an opportunity for us to provide the travelers into something with an exchange rate that's a lot cheaper for them. And this is partly also to improve the seamless experience for our own consumers. So we strive to always find ways for a seamless experience for our passengers, and by various product offering apart from just operational efficiencies. And then from there, Tune Money then just completely changed in 2018 into a FinTech business. So it now operates in Malaysia and Singapore, and it hopes to operate in Thailand very soon, and also in Philippines and Indonesia. So it has all those necessary licenses to be a FinTech. It's got the e-money license, remittance license, and in Malaysia it has lending license. So it's essentially like a virtual bank already. And the whole idea is to serve the unbanked and the underbanked and the SMEs as well. And how do we fit BigPay to the overall scheme of things? So they look at ways in terms of providing the whole ecosystem, the SMEs, the payments, and so forth in our own ecosystem as well. And then we also have our farm to table. I mentioned quickly, that was the small businesses. And the other one is the academy. Now, the academy is a very interesting story. It was meant to actually reskill and upskill our own workforce as we embark on this digital journey, which started more than 4 years ago. We had to restructure our whole organization. The reason why we did that was because we need to facilitate the agile team, right? We need to facilitate speed to market in producing things, and to make sure that people work together more, because the traditional organizational structure is not going to work with us transforming everything and making it more data driven and so forth. And especially in our tech team, we felt that we need to build it and restructure it, because the tech team before was just ICT, business as usual. And that doesn't cut it, right? If you want to be a travel and lifestyle tech, like what you see in most companies in Silicon Valley and so forth. So we decided to restructure that tech team and have 5 key tech units in there, not just the ICT business as usual, but they also evolved into becoming more cloud focused, cloud infrastructure focused. We are about almost 98% on cloud now. And then we have software engineers, we have the data science team, we have the product UI UX team, and we have the cybersecurity and information security team. And in that quest, in building that talent, we found it extremely challenging to find the right kind of talent to actually help us build what we need to build in the speed that we want. And as a result, we had to find talent outside the region. We had to pinch talent from all around the world. And we felt that this is not going to be sustainable. We need to do something about it. There's a huge talent gap in this part of the region. Forget about talking about blockchain, metaverse, or whatsoever, right? The basic software engineers, it's really tough to find, and the right kind of data science and so forth, right? So what we decided was, let's emulate what we did for our aviation academy, where we train pilots. When we built a talent pipeline of pilots, so that we will never be subject to global shortage of pilots, which happens once in a while. There's always a cycle that happens, so we don't want to be subjected to that. So that's why we built Aviation Academy. So we said, we need to achieve what we need to achieve. We have big plans here, but talent is one thing that we need to make sure that we build that pipeline so we're not disrupted, right? So, so with the help of Google, our business partner, we built this academy. Firstly, the whole idea was with all those talent that we hired in like hundreds in a few months or so, we got to harmonize the way they work, put a certain standards in there, create a different kind of job grading and so forth that's not related to the aviation, because that's more traditional, right? So that's a different way of doing it. And how do we continuously upskill them? Because there's always new technology that we need to use and so forth. So we created a co-curriculum, firstly to upskill the existing tech team that we have. And then secondly, the non-tech workforce, how do we make sure that they are part of this whole digital journey? Because as we do more and more machine learning work, they will be redeployed. Hundreds of them will be redeployed. As a responsible employer, how do we help them? How do we help them be part of this whole digital journey? So we created a whole reskilling program. We decided that we need to firstly expose them to a digital fundamentals course so that they understand all the various topics or so. Once they graduate from that digital fundamental course, then we decided that, okay, there's 6 tracks that you can choose as a specialized track of your own choice. So please, you know, continue if you're interested. So the 6 tracks are digital marketing track, software engineering tracks, product UI UX tracks, cybersecurity, data science, and cloud infrastructure, right? All these tracks are created because we need those talent in those particular fields in order to help us to build what we needed to build. So that co-curriculum was co-created with Google and our heads, our tech heads, because if we don't involve the tech heads and we create something they don't want to hire, then that's a problem to us. So we need to make sure that they're job ready and they can go into the various projects that's required. And surprisingly, when we opened this to our staff last year, huge response, right? People from various backgrounds, cabin crew, baggage handlers, pilots, people from operations control, they come in. We didn't have any criteria because we want everybody to just embrace it in a big way and not be intimidated by it. Over 2,000 signed up, half of them completed the digital fundamentals, and then half of them continued with their specialized tracks. So now we have pilots who are coding, aircraft engineers who are now software engineers. We have a baggage handler who's doing data analysts. So there's a lot of opportunities for those who wants to reskill themselves, and we want to make sure that that's an opportunity for them too. And you know, after they graduate, we gave them a choice. Either you go back to what you were doing before, but be more data driven, and that's part of the digital transformation, or you could go and be part of some of the projects that we have created. And we have lots of projects as we build AirAsia Digital. Or you could change careers and reinvent themselves and just start from scratch, or as a junior staff in software engineering or in data science and so forth. So we see 50% wants to do that and 50% wants to stay back, but they want to reinvent the way they do things in their own respective department. And we started opening up to the public because of the demand coming from government agencies and other corporates and so forth. So we started reskilling also a small part of the nation in starting April this year. And as a result of the feedback that we get, that we built our own on-demand learning platform. And this is something like what I say, Netflix of training. We have various subjects that we offer. And we also encourage third-party content providers to come in, because we want to promote community learning as well. And we provide them with revenue sharing depending on the number of viewers as well. And it's a subscriber model and that kind of thing. So it evolved into something we unexpected, and it became an edutech vertical in itself, basically. So because of us understanding that data and knowing what we needed to do, we're able to connect the dots. So we keep incubating new businesses. So for me, is the next big thing for AirAsia is whatever that we have built in that that time in 2018 and speeded up that growth in last year and this year because, you know, we couldn't do anything else, right? We couldn't fly or whatsoever. We felt that, okay, the next big thing is that us firmly being acknowledged as a true lifestyle and travel business ecosystem, not just an airline, but more than that. And how do we use all the technology? I mean, the technology that we see is probably the next big thing for us to implement in a big way is facial recognition. We've been wanting to do this for more than 3 years, but Malaysia Airport wasn't friendly with us, so they refused to acknowledge our facial recognition. But then with the pandemic and the contactless that has encouraged, right? So now they're quite open for us to implement our facial recognition. We feel voice activation, voice recognition or voice AI is another big thing for us to implement as well. And education is big because I think if we don't get the right talent, whatever ambition that you might have is just not going to happen. So I think that's something the nation needs to look at really, because it's been so hard for a lot of people to find talent. Even our own team now, we still have hundreds that we need to hire. And it has been difficult, although we have a tech center in Bangalore and in Singapore and all that, but everyone's looking for the same talent all around the world, right? So it has been tough to find the right talent. I think the nation needs to do something about it. And make sure that the education is focused on reskilling and be job ready. That's the key thing. Be job ready and possess the right skill for us to embrace the IR 4.0 in a big way. So that's what I have in relation to AirAsia experience.
Amazing. That's all that I can say. Taking from what data that you had 3-4 years ago, you've put together so many things. And I think the most important takeaway for me is that your intention is really to ensure that seamless customer experience from A to Z. And from that, you reinvented the journey itself. And you aligned your internals to that journey, which meant you have given birth to new business lines like the edutech, the logistic, and also your fintech. I think that's great. But the following question that I have on that would be when it comes to the community, because you mentioned just now that with the conversations that you have started with the chats in the app, there is a lot of things that can be done out of that because people are, like when they can't fly, they can talk about it. I'm in the community. I'm in some of the communities, and I could see that they're also using the community to check with each other about, what's the SOP and other things. Yes. So if you talk about the next big thing in terms of community, because you also talked about the community for logistics, the freight chain, right? It seems like that could give you, they're giving cues of another set of business line for AirAsia. I don't know. How do you see the next big thing for the community that you are building, even if it's not a conscious thing or not intended?
So I mean, that community, especially if you start with the chats, right? I mean, when we first started, of course there will be people complaining about refunds and everything of that sort, so it's a lot of hard work to change that into like, okay, let's talk about the specific topic that we created here, that community and so forth. So there's a lot of engagement there. But what we foresee, why we wanted to do this is it's really like, to encourage like-minded people to be able to share ideas, right? Share ideas of a specific topic of their interest. For instance, travel inspiration community that we had in our chat. So if someone went to Japan or Tokyo, for instance, and they had a great time, and then they want to share with people, and they go, oh, this is my itinerary, and then other people in the community might like, oh, I want to follow your itinerary since you have a great time and that kind of thing. So it's then easier because you have others to also share what their experience are. Is another form of stickiness, is another form of cross-selling, and at the same time engaging people of like-minded as well. And then many things that can be done from that chat as we grow, right? I mean, other opportunities would be like, okay, like-minded people want to travel together also. It could actually evolve into a dating platform as well, right? So many things that can happen, but for now, I mean, we got to make that seamless. I mean, even like playing games in the community itself, how can we create that? How can we gamify it with that community that has been created? Using the point system that we have, the loyalty points as well, so that they can use points to, if you create a game among themselves, how do we have that points as a prize for them to choose or to put in the next level or to transfer points or something like that. And the most interesting thing is that our reward points are very valuable in the sense that it gives us insights of the behavior of a particular consumer, right? It gives us understanding of their inner circle, because when they want to give vouchers or transfer points, they don't give it to just anybody. It's always the inner circle that they want to give, right? So that gives us more data to understand as well. So I think community, it's something that can be really quite big. So hence, whatever that we're doing, even in EduTech, we're creating a community knowledge hub as well. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pause us here and I'm going to ask Azeem and KP, from the big things that Aireen has shared, do you see anything that you feel you could work with that that FMT and funding societies can work with? And maybe we can spotlight both Azeem, KP, actually Azeem, KP and Aireen. Let's spotlight all three and see what they want to say about the possibility of the convergence or the collaboration between the three big things that you guys have shared this morning. Maybe Azeem, you want to start?
Sure, yeah. Definitely, we can converge, because at the end of the day, when I started off my speech, I was talking about having the right framework, the right mindset for us to embrace this next big thing, or at least, well, accelerate or incubate the next big thing. Once we have the society being intellectually engaged with this agenda, we will be able to create a conducive environment for Malaysian cooperation to triumph. But while FMT may aim to provide intelligent and balanced journalism, we have practical approaches to grow businesses, and that is in the form of powering up businesses. Now, FMT alone has about 5 to 8 million unique visitors, and through our content collaboration with Media Prima, we reach out to about 15 million Malaysians. There's almost everybody on the reading news, and you can do a lot of things with these eyeballs. And media can play a role to accelerate the growth by working with the businesses on publicity for their products and giving them a voice when it comes to refining public policies to help their businesses.
But how is this going to work? Because Aireen was just saying that AirAsia is going to cut down on their advertising, and they want to use their own community. So how can we find a midway to this between AirAsia and FMT on this?
So FMT is we focus on public policy a lot, and we work with major organizations when it comes to refining, advocating for policies to improve market failures, right? Because we have the eyes of the people, the government, and institutions and other corporations. So it's all about working together with them to help them have a conducive environment, the right policies, the right institution mindset or approach to their businesses for them to grow. And but what's also interesting is Kien Poon's funding society also has about they target the SMEs. 98% of our business establishments are SMEs, and FMT, we are open to work with high potential SMEs to grow their businesses through an equity play. Because for startups, usually they can't afford to burn cash for marketing. So because FMT has a program where we acquire stake in a startup, and in return we give them perpetual marketing, in fact. And because we own a share in the company, we would be driven to make sure it works, because we will then rise and fall with them. Because at the end of the day, when they do better publicity, they do better sales, and that would help companies like Funding Society, I hope, to sort of provide their financing. Because Funding Society, I would imagine, would need to make sure that the cash flow, the revenue, the top line are there, and through using media, we will be able to get that for SMEs.
Okay, what about you, KP? What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think both FMT and AirAsia Digital are sitting on gold, right? So as they say, data is the new gold. So I think on the FMT side, I think as Azeem has sort of mentioned earlier, I think two things. I think number one, they basically have a lot of eyeballs. So potentially what I can sort of think of now is how do we leverage that eyeballs to complement our top funnel acquisition. And I mean, that's one thing, right? How do we leverage on FMT's eyeball to basically generate leads or acquire more SMEs, and for us to basically reach out and serve them? Because I mean, to be honest, even though we have only been around for 5 years, and even though we do a lot of marketing campaigns, a lot of engagements with the regulator, through the regulators' events and whatnot, there are still a big portion of the community that are not aware of our existence. So if you tell them, hey guys, bank loans from banks, then they will say, yeah, I know what is that. When you tell them, hey, fintech, lending, digital financing, or even peer-to-peer financing, which we are sort of regulated under by the SC, you'll be very surprised that a lot of them are not familiar. And the other thing is, I mean, although we say that traditional media, digital media is obviously sort of taking over more traditional media. But I think one recent experience that we have, so we did run a television advertisements for around a month with our partners. And surprisingly, we got a very encouraging number of leads or applicants from the channel. So I definitely think that lead acquisition is one area that we can definitely work together on. The second piece is on what Azeem has mentioned earlier, is basically they have a very good feel of the ground, the media guys. So I am not sure what is the current data analytics setup at FMT, but potentially what can work is if they are able to sort of leverage on their people on the ground and their feel of the ground on what sort of products or that make most sense for the SMEs, or what the SMEs need the most. That's where we can sort of tailor our proposition to fill that gap, right? Mm-hmm. So I think those are the two key things that I can sort of think of for now. Now on AirAsia Digital side, I think needless to say more, they're sitting on a lot of data that obviously will be very beneficial for us in terms of credit profiling the SMEs or doing some sort of underwriting. And I think as per what Aireen you have mentioned earlier, you are not only working via BigPay, your fintech arm, so you are also open to working with other operators or players as well. So some sort of like Alibaba model where you are originator or lead generator for the other financiers that is connected to your platform, right? I think that will be super powerful for us because the number of years of data that you have spanning across the population, those are the things that I think will definitely be super helpful for a digital SME financier like us.
What about you, Aireen? Go ahead.
Yes. I mean, I see that we still continue to work with the likes of Kien Poon and Azeem's basically, but I suppose more is a different kind of working arrangement as well, and more specific towards a certain targets and a certain returns that we need to see, because we understand what we need to do and with the data that we have, so we need to make sure that whatever that we work with is additional to what we have, and which I think there are many opportunities, right? Like what Kien Poon say, he's happy to sit down with you, Kien Poon. anytime that you want. The data that we have are all KYC data, probably more so than any other super app that you find, because these are data that consumer has to go through when they take a flight. They have to go through immigration, they have to show their identities and stuff like that. So these are good data that we felt that the reason why we can bill others pretty well as well.
I'm going to go back to Azeem, and I just want to ask, because you talked about mental reset and economic reset as something that Malaysia needs to do as the next big thing. Based on what we've shared this morning, you were the first to start this now. After hearing KP and also Aireen, how would you refine that, I guess, approach for mental and economic reset with all this next big things, all these next big things available, right? How else can we approach the mental and economic reset for Malaysia moving forward?
Yeah. We gotta start with self-realization, right? The thing is, the people themselves needs to be clear of their choices. And I think when we look at the situation we are in, it's not very clear on what the direction of the country is, right? So we have a government which came in suddenly, and the policies which are in place are still not clear, right? So people are calling for a general election. But even if we have a general election, who are we going to vote? So we got your PN, your BN, your PH. So when people are confused, what is the guarantee of a positive outcome from a general election? Because over the last 2-3 years, we've seen leaders jumping from one side to another, right? So people have lost track who is from this party, who's from that party, So when you ask about how else we can approach this, right? So that's the duty of media to inform the public that these are your choices, right? So these are your choices, and if you these are the players in the market. You got your the BN, the PH, and the PN. And in FMT, we are very big on doing video infographics and explainers. Is a major thing this year. We've experienced exponential growth in terms of traffic. Up to about we were at 4 million earlier this year. Now we're 26 million views. So with this kind of approach, right, we can show the people that this is where we are at, and the consequence of voting this particular leader or coalition will result in this kind of policies, right? And in the context of what we are discussing today, it's important to know the policies, the economic policy of each of this coalition, how they would approach SMEs, how they would approach big corporation, what are their policies with regards to dominant players in the market, right? Are they gonna help to, do an affirmative action for smaller players to compete? How they manage the competition act? So it's not easy issues, These are complex issues. So media has to break it down and make it very simple for the people to understand.
Malaysia has their digital economy blueprint that they issued during the year. Shouldn't this cover all the basics at least?
Interesting that you mentioned the blueprint. Yeah. Now, it was a blueprint introduced by the Nassim Muhyiddin government, but then in terms of follow through, we are not seeing the full execution of it. They talk about cybersecurity, they talk about data, right? But the ironic thing is when you talk about data protection, personal data protection, they are also leveraging on the likes of the big tech for their cloud, right? The big tech, which who have all of our data. So while they're trying to defend against this big tech, they're also embracing this fact. Okay, come over to our country, take our data, store our data, right? So saying something is one thing, doing it is another.
I'm gonna now get ourselves into trouble by going into a discussion on the new tech that we've been talking about since earlier. The words like metaverse, non-fungible tokens, decentralized financing and Web 3.0. Big words, I believe. And I think the big question right now is readiness of Malaysia to adopt these kind of technology. And here I'd like to just go back to KP, because I think one of them, decentralized financing, is something that would be relevant to you. And in fact, Aireen as well, since you've got fintech in yours. Do you see you guys working towards decentralized financing, or are you doing decentralized financing? Maybe you guys can share a bit about your thoughts on this. So maybe we start with KP.
Yeah, I mean, DeFi is definitely something that we are looking into, but I think very early stage. Basically, we are just trying to figure out what are the use cases for us, and basically just familiarizing and getting a hang of things.
Still getting to know lah.
Correct. It's not something that I think we'll be rolling out in the immediate future, right? So say next year. But it's definitely something that we are keeping a close eye on.
We can talk about the I guess what it takes to get there, or challenges that you guys see. And maybe Aireen, you can jump in here as well. Challenges you can see in terms of us trying to get to the level where we are ready to adopt something like that, DeFi for fintech.
I think government regulations, the readiness of regulatory, framework to regulate some of the segments is very important, because these are ultimately new things, and if you don't regulate it properly, or you don't have a proper regulatory framework, you either stifle it from developing, or it goes out of hand. And I think this is sort of the approach that we take when we enter into every new market, because to be honest, we are one of the pioneers when it comes to digital financing in most of our markets that we are in. And sometimes they tend to have no regulations yet in the markets that we are in. And that's where we need to engage very closely with the regulators to try to promote and push through thought leadership in how we can sort of regulate and manage these segments, right? I think the other big piece I think that Aireen have sort of alluded to earlier is the readiness of talents in this part of the world. And I mean, the competition of talent, especially tech talent, is real, right? You have all the big guys, including AirAsia Digital, trying to build up the digital presence and their tech offerings. So a lot of them are based in Singapore, and for obvious reasons. So a lot of the tech talent sort of get sucked out into those countries, because that's where most of the companies are hiring. But of course, we have seen some corporates where they've sort of reversed the trend by setting up their tech center here and basically trying to reverse the brain drain or to build up internal talents here. So I think that piece is actually very critical. So as part of our education system, are we putting in place the necessary foundation to develop talent in these segments, right?
Will AirAsia Academy ever go into education of this kind of new tech, not just DeFi, Metaverse, Web 3.0, NFT, all this? Will you ever, Aireen?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I've already told our director of innovation and strategy when I saw these names that you mentioned, like, oh my God, we got to start building knowledge on these areas, right? Like decentralized financials, the blockchain part, the metaverse, the Web 3.0, because everybody wants to learn about it. So thank you for alerting me that, Matisa. But I agree with KP. Sorry, I called you Kien Poon.
Yeah, that's his name. KP.
I agree with him that I don't think Malaysia is ready. It's a very challenging place for Malaysia to, with the blockchain regulation and that kind of thing. It's something that, yes, we want to work on, and I'm sure it's going to be very beneficial. But we got to work on that policies and regulation first to allow us.
And I think connectivity is another thing as well, right? Connectivity in rural areas?
Yes, definitely. It is. I mean, if you look at certain rural areas, there's no connectivity at all. So I think what government needs to do is like to make sure that digitalization or digital economy is accessible to all, not just a few.
Yeah.
Especially the rural areas, it has to be affordable too, and it's inclusive as well, right? So that should be the main priority for them, because otherwise we're just building the gap even bigger by not including the B40s and rural areas in this whole thing that we needed to do as a digital economy. Yeah,
I think the one that has so far revealed any idea about metaverse. I mean, there are quite a few conversations going on in the tech spectrum, but the one that has gone all out to do this, Facebook, they've even got this whole video to even explain how their metaverse work for home, for work, and all that. Do you guys see this as something that you would be interested to work towards? Media, lifestyle, even funding, because I'm sure funding, you have funding, the pitches to the investors, which can also be metaversed rather than face to face. What do you guys think of that? Will we ever get there? If not next year?
I think it will. I mean, like even for our own aviation needs in once training using, because I was experimenting with HoloLens, and I thought, hey, this could be a great thing to get to speed up training, right? Because like, how do we speed up training for the aircraft engineers so that they can do the training using the holograms and stuff like that, or even the pilots before they get onto the simulator, they usually have this training in classroom called MFTD, where only 2 people can go in. Like, how do we scale it up using this technology for that? But there's also other opportunities, right? How do you immerse the user into going into a certain destination as a teaser, so they could feel what it would be if they go to Sapporo, for instance, right? And then trigger the interest, and then they can purchase the tickets and so forth. So there are many aspects to do that. I'm sure at some point where you could use it to scale up, and the cost is, the unit cost is good, then definitely is, and there's a purpose for it, then there's a real usage for it, right?
I can see your mental mode when it comes to adopting changes. You're going back to the fundamentals. If it has anything to do with my revenue going up or my cost going down, that is something that is relevant for AirAsia to look at, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah,
that's a very good. I think that's a really good practice there. And again, I can see that you're sticking to your the other fundamental, which is to ensure that there's seamless customer experience that you're preserving. And as long as that has something to do with that, then that's something that you will take into account of. What about Azeem and KP? Metaverse.
So the metaverse is another virtual world that is being built at the moment. Initially, a week ago, I wasn't too concerned about it, but when Manisa brought it up to me earlier this week and I started to look at it, hey, the people are spending real money there. In that world, people buy land for $2 million USD. There's one painting sold for $70 million USD. It's crazy. And cryptocurrency, its value is being backed and supported because of the activity that's going on the metaverse. But my thinking is, if we were to leverage on it, there are 2 major hurdles. First is hardware. The hardware that requires for us to get into the metaverse is HoloLens or the, so not HoloLens, the virtual headset, right? That is not very cheap and you don't see it in people's houses. But I think just like the PC, it might be a mainstream item. The second is internet speed. 5G needs to be there. You need to have fiber optics. It has to be accessible by everyone. Then only will you be able to enter the metaverse. But something seriously is going on there. There's a new economic ecosystem being grown in that spectrum. And it would be unwise for us, especially me in media. We are in media to ignore it. And the metaverse at the moment is about building the world and it's about putting content together. So there is many opportunities for Malaysians to actually get on and to create this world. And we as media company, we very much are looking at it already to see how the metaverse could be the next big thing we should leverage on, because it is claimed that the metaverse is a successor to social media. One went as far as to say that it is a successor to the internet. So it's not our call, but something that we have already started looking at seriously to see how content can be created in that world and how new opportunities could be presented to Malaysians moving forward.
It's interesting that in the example that you saw, they were applying NFT in metaverse. That means you could purchase an irreplaceable item with the token in the metaverse, and that is interesting because it seems that all this new tech could actually work together rather than separately. And KP, you're not off the hook. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, frankly speaking, it's not technology that I'm very familiar with, but I think like all new technologies, we'll be keeping a close eye.
Yeah.
Now, for instance, if it becomes like what Azeem said, it replaces it is the next internet, or it is the next big social media platform where everyone will congregate. That's where I think we need to make sure that we are present there as well to sort of engage the community, which is presence in this metaverse, right? So for us, yeah, no big plans to jump into the metaverse, but obviously keeping a close eye so that we can react accordingly.
I remember conversations on the cloud, or going on the cloud, started 5 to 10 years before people were comfortable going on it. And I'm glad that we're starting, or we're part of the conversation today. Although I think all of us are kind of like, I wouldn't like to say clueless, because we somewhat know what we're talking about, what these are, but it's just that we all don't have in-depth knowledge into them and how they would apply to our organizations. But everything starts with conversation and media. I think media plays a big role in taking this conversation further, and I'm looking forward to hear more about this. So let's see in 5 years' time, maybe we can have a reunion of this conversation and see where we all are in terms of the new tech, and see how we are all taking the technology further with whatever that we are doing at that point of time. How about that? Okay, all right. So we are almost at the end of our session. I'd like to thank Aireen, Azeem, and also KP for your time this morning. I think I've got so many takeaways from the conversation, and so many things more that I want to think about and also further process. And it's something that, like I said, I think all of us have to kind of like digest. And it's great that Aireen, that you have already started actions by talking to your director of strategy, did you say, on this, and that's great, because that's what we want to do, to shape the world. Dato, I think it starts with us thinking about it. So I'm going to hand over back to Dato Azman Shah to close the session. I hope he's ready for it.
Yes, I am.
Hey, okay, all right.
Yeah,
You, Dato.
well, I was on the edge of my seat taking notes, obviously, since I am from the brick and mortar business. And whilst you guys were talking about the metaverse, I'm still exploring the Marvel universe. So I'm a few light years behind time, I guess. But nevertheless, I think I truly enjoyed the session. Thank you, Aireen, KP, Azeem, for your valuable insights, for sharing your experience and your views and your plans. Obviously, we haven't seen the end of the pandemic. Cases are on the rise again. We at the ports, as you know, 24/7. Similarly with the airports and all the essential services, So we think we waited with bated breath to see what develops. We now hear of a new variant and so on and so forth. But I think the next year is going to be equally challenging, equally important in terms of our of the actions that we take. I dare say that 2022 is going to be an inflection point, to quote our famous or infamous alumni George Soros, as the world attempts to recover from the devastating impact of the COVID-19 perfect storm. But I am so very pleased to see that many of our alumni are playing crucial roles in the recovery efforts. And I thank you for all that you do to make Malaysia and the world a better place. On the part of LSE ASM, as I promised earlier, I'd like to announce two new, not so big things, but basically it is initiatives on our part to further the cause of LSE 2030. The first one is actually the LSE career job listing for alumni and organizations that they represent, so that we can start posting vacancies, job vacancies in the organizations, and for fellow alumni and their friends to apply should they be interested. And the second one is basically that we're going to start broadcasting podcasts. And this is the initiative of the LSE ASM Tech Committee. We'll be broadcasting beginning next month. Some of the topics that we will cover include coaching and mentoring, networking, the events, alumni tech events especially, and our very own project, the LSE Recode Asia 2022. So details will be announced through our WhatsApp group, our Facebook page, and also our website. Well, basically, just leaves me to say thanks to all the panelists again, to all our participants, attendees who signed up and sat through the whole forum, and also to the moderator Manisa. You did a great job, organizing committee, and also. I really shared, I really was very pleased with the sharing that we had and the interaction that we had, and a lot of ideas that came about as well. To conclude, stay safe, stay sane, stay tuned for the next big thing. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.